Hi and welcome back to the cottage. Today we are talking all things kitchen and discussing some simple ways that you can make this hardworking space both clean and clutter-free. The kitchen is arguably the most hardworking space in a home, and it also tends to be the spot where we store the greatest number of items, besides maybe the garage or a storage room. And so it isn't a big surprise that with those two things combined, this space can be very frustrating on a day-to-day basis. And so today I want to offer some relief and give you some tips on ways to maintain a simple, clean, and clutter-free kitchen. Number one is to think about how you want to use the space and also who is going to be using it. This may seem like kind of a silly question because it's a kitchen, right? Of course, we want it to function as a place to prepare food, but the kitchen also does serve many different purposes within a home. You may find that it is the place where people congregate when you have guests over, or a lot of families use their kitchen as the command center where they have the family calendar laid out, they have chore charts and things like that. I even know some people who use their kitchen countertops as the spot where they fold their laundry. And so decide for yourself what you want to be happening in your kitchen. You may find that some of the things that you've been doing in your kitchen, you want to kick them out of there. But you also may find that there are some things that you want to bring in. For example, we were noticing that I was constantly bringing my laptop computer into the kitchen space. And so instead of fighting with that, we decided to make a corner of the kitchen a dedicated like mini office space. We bought a riser that has a drawer in it where I can store some different office supplies, some pencils, things like that. And then my laptop can sit right on it in the corner. I can answer emails, do little bits of work standing up throughout the day as I'm homeschooling. I can just as easily take that laptop and put it on the table if I need to do extended work. And so that is a function, sort of a mini office that is happening in our kitchen. And knowing how to set those boundaries for that has allowed that to still happen, while at the same time leaving the kitchen also available for that food preparation. When it comes to who is using the kitchen, we don't want to set it up for the random guest or visitor that's going to be in our space. We want to make it work best for those who are using it on a regular daily basis. So for example, if you have young children who are just starting to make their own snacks, prepare simple meals, you're going to want to tailor it somewhat for them to be able to access the tools that they need to get that job done without having to climb on the countertops and be dangerous. Or if you have someone with physical limitations who lives in your home, you want to make sure that they have easy access to their tools as well. So these two things, understanding how you want your kitchen to be used and who is going to use it, this will sort of lay the groundwork for every other tip that I'm going to explain today. The next thing you're going to want to do is establish some zones. You've probably heard of the classic kitchen work triangle where your sink, your stove, and your fridge serve as the three appliances that are supposed to be spread out in such a way that they can make a triangle, and this is supposed to be the most efficient way. This is how we laid out our kitchen, but I understand and recognize that not everyone has the same layout in their space. You may find that your sink is right next to your fridge or your stove is right next to your sink. And this kind of changes the layout a little bit and makes it a little bit more difficult. And so instead of remodeling your space, I would encourage you to use those appliances as the base and then create some zones around them. So for example, in our kitchen where our fridge is located, everything near the fridge, all of the cabinetry on that side of the kitchen is dedicated to food. So that is our food zone. And then at the sink, I have a spot for our dish drain, our soap, everything that I would need to get things cleaned up in the kitchen after a long day's work in there. And also by the stove, I have everything that I would need for food preparation. So all of the pots and pans and utensils for chopping and stirring, that is all on that side of the kitchen in that zone. And so find those appliances, those big things that you use often, and then create little zones that are connected to them. You may be someone who really enjoys having a morning smoothie, so you might find that you have a little zone specifically for your smoothie maker and all of your supplies that you need for your smoothies. Or you may be somebody who really enjoys baking and you have a baking center in your kitchen. Find the zones that work best for you. No two kitchens are going to be exactly alike, and set it up that way. You're going to find a lot of efficiency by finding these dedicated spots for dedicated things. All right, let's talk a little bit about organization with this next tip, tip number 3, and that is to organize with baskets, bins, and dividers. Now, I think most people would agree that when it comes to kitchen storage, drawers are a little bit more superior because you can pull them out and see everything that's inside of it, even in the very back, whereas cabinet storage, we usually have things stacked in front of each other and it gets a little bit more cumbersome. And so drawers, if you have them, they're great, but not every cabinet in your kitchen is going to be a drawer. And so if you have a cabinet that you want to utilize a little bit more fully, you can use a basket or bin to make a pseudo drawer within that cabinet space. For example, if you have a lot of spices or cooking oils, you can put them all in one basket that you can pull out, look inside. You can even take it out and put it on the counter if you need to access anything that's behind it in the cabinet, and it just makes it really easy. It also helps to keep things a lot more clean and tidy because everything is kind of contained within that basket space. And this just works really well. It's a simple, easy tip that you can incorporate really into any kitchen. If you already have drawers, you will probably find benefit in using some dividers to make the spaces a little bit smaller so things aren't just shifting around all over in there. I know most people probably have a utensil organizer in their kitchen drawer where you keep your knives and forks and spoons separate, but you can use that same technique in other drawers such as a snack drawer to keep granola bars and fruit snacks separate and things aren't sliding all around. So micro-organize those spaces as much as you possibly can by putting them in categories, and this is really going to just help things go along more smoothly. It's not going to seem so cluttered because everything has its own little place, and it's easy to keep clean and it's easy to put things away where they belong. Another great way to keep your kitchen looking clean and clutter-free is to establish some clear countertop space. Now, you're probably getting sick of me saying this over and over again, but it can really be so impactful. And I know every time that I mention this, I will get some comments up from people that say, I have this item that I use every day throughout the day, and it's more of a hassle for me to put them away in the cabinet and then take them out again. And we all need to make these decisions for ourselves, but I really do want to challenge that notion to you. I was recently listening to a Joshua Becker video, and he was talking about the toaster. So if you have a toaster and you use it every single day, you have toast every morning for breakfast, you put it on your counter, use a toaster, it takes maybe 3 or 4 minutes tops. The function of that appliance has been done, you get your toast, and then if you find that it's more convenient to just leave it on the counter because it's annoying to put it away again, it's going to sit out on your counter for the rest of the day, which is 23 hours and 56 minutes. And so it's kind of silly when you think about it that that is going to be sitting on your counter unused for that large of a portion of time, when really if you had taken an extra 10 seconds maybe, it could have been put away and out of sight, out of mind, not producing any visual clutter. And so again, you need to establish for yourself what is a level in your kitchen that you want to have clear. I do definitely encourage you to at least have an area in your kitchen, maybe a corner if you can, that you have as a no clutter zone. You're not allowed to leave anything out on the counter in that space because that allows that spot to be able to be worked at any given time in your kitchen, which again, I'll say it again, the kitchen, those horizontal surfaces are working surfaces, and so we want them to be available to do the work that needs to be done. And so if they're filled up with small appliances, it's not going to be useful. You're going to be cleaning around them. It's really not as convenient as people think that it is. So really challenge yourself with that. Now, I'm not saying that the entire kitchen countertop needs to be free of anything. As you'll see in my kitchen, I do have some things that are left out all the time. I have this decorative piece by my sink that I just like to look at. It's a vintage scale. I leave it out. I also have a crock where I keep all of my cooking utensils, my spatulas and whisks and things things like that. And it's just really convenient having it right there on the countertop. And so again, just decide for yourself what is something that I do want to keep out all the time. Maybe do some experiments and try the method of putting them away right after you're done using them and see if you like that and you like the looks of your kitchen having it done that way. And if not, you can go back to keeping it out on your countertop. You haven't lost anything in the process. Tip number 5 is to evaluate what you are storing in your kitchen. Now, maybe the reason why you're not sold on the idea of putting things away off of the counter when you're done using them is because you find it difficult to cram them into your cabinet space. That is probably because you have too much in your kitchen. Now, anyone that's watching this video, your kitchen probably falls into one of these two categories. Either it's a really large kitchen with lots of storage, but the storage areas are all full, or you have a small kitchen with not a lot of storage and the storage areas are all full. There is something about the kitchen storage that tends to fill up, whether that's a small kitchen or a large one. It's just something that happens because if we have the storage space there and it's behind closed doors, we can kind of out of sight, out of mind with it and just shove it in there and forget about it. And so you may find it helpful to do what I did years ago when I was trying to simplify my kitchen and make it more streamlined and clutter-free. I put a big blanket down on my kitchen floor and pulled everything out of my cabinets and drawers in the kitchen. It was a disaster. It was embarrassing. I actually filmed the process. You're probably seeing a clip of that right now. And it was just kind of eye-opening for me, and it might be eye-opening for you too to see the things that you have stored. I came across some things that I hadn't seen in years and honestly forgotten that I even owned, which made it a really easy decision to declutter them because I hadn't missed them at all. You may find that when everything is laid out, you can easily identify the 10 or 20 pieces that are the staples of your kitchen, the things that you use most often that make your routine in the kitchen a lot more simple. These items should be given priority storage space. These are the things that you should be able to easily access without having to dig in the back of the cabinets for. You may also find when you pull everything out that you have some really bulky, heavy items that you only use once or twice a year. And maybe the kitchen isn't the best place to store them. You can store them in a different room of the house and bring them in when you need them. So really just constantly evaluating what you have stored in your kitchen is going to be a huge game changer for you. And the more that you do it, the easier it will become. Tip number 6 is to rethink all of the vertical spaces in your kitchen. Because kitchens have those horizontal countertops and they are where we work, I think many people subconsciously think of the kitchen as more of a horizontal space and they neglect that there is a lot of vertical surface area that is shown in the room. So for example, the fridge, the dishwasher, those areas tend to become billboards in many kitchens where people will put notes, there'll be magnets. For the kids, there'll be artwork that is on those areas and they become huge clutter magnets. And I would really encourage you to not do that, to try to keep those areas, those surfaces clear because they are such a large part of the room. If you want to display some of these items, maybe try to tuck them away on a side of the fridge that isn't quite as visible in the space or something like that. Also, when it comes to cleaning, be sure to think about cleaning the faces of your cabinets. We are always cleaning the tops of our kitchen counters because it's where we prepare our food, but those kitchen cabinet faces, they also get fingerprints, sticky, they get little bits of grease on them from splatter from whatever we're cooking. If you have wood cabinets, you may not see this grease or these stains as easily. This is why I decided to go with white cabinets in my kitchen. I want to see what's there so that I can make sure it's kept clean at all times. And it really can be as simple as just going around with a wet rag and a bucket of warm soapy water and just taking some time to wipe down the faces of those cabinets. And the final tip that I have for making your kitchen clean and clutter-free is to develop some systems to make things more streamlined. I know many people who use meal planning and bulk preparation as a great way to keep their kitchen clean most of the time. So one day of the week, as they're preparing all of these meals, they're prepping all of the snacks for the week, it is a complete disaster. There are things everywhere. But then the rest of the week, all that needs to be done is a quick reheating of the food that's already been prepared and also the cleaning up of the dishes. And so this just helps them to save some time. It works really well for them. If that sounds entirely too overwhelming to you and too huge of a burden, maybe you can instead commit to just cleaning up as you go along, cooking and baking. I know when I was first starting to learn the ropes of the kitchen side by side with my mom, she had this little saying of a clean kitchen is a happy kitchen, and that has just stuck with me all of these years later as a reminder to clean up as I go along, put away those ingredients that I've already used, or wipe down the countertop that has any spills on it as I spill on it. If something is simmering on the top of the stove or baking in the oven, maybe I wash up the dishes at that time. And it's just a great way to make sure that it doesn't become this huge burden that you have to tackle all at once. You may find it also helpful to go along with some natural cues as a reminder to clean certain things. A fridge is a great example of this. We can forget to clean the fridge, but if we get in the habit of cleaning right before grocery day, it means that our fridge is the least full that it's ever going to be. We can give it a quick wipe down. We can throw out any spoiled material or use up anything that needs to be used up before it gets spoiled. And then it's just ready and available to refill with those new foods. So that's a great reminder. Those things work hand in hand. And one of the best things that I have done to streamline my use of the kitchen is actually my nightly reset routine. Now, we don't have a dishwasher here. I know many people run a load of dishes at the end of the day, but I like to hand wash everything at the end of the day and then sweep the floors, wipe down the counters. And this just means that in the morning when I enter my kitchen, I am filled with a sense of peace and joy instead of feeling burdened by a huge chore that is laid out in front of me. So those are my top 7 tips for the kitchen. Again, this is such a hardworking space in our homes that we need to give it a little bit more care and attention than other rooms. And if we do, we will more easily be able to keep it clean and clutter-free. Thank you so much for watching today's video, and I hope that you'll stop by the cottage again really soon.